The bathroom door was never supposed to be left open. It was one of those silent, unspoken rules in the house. But that afternoon, a narrow gap, barely wider than my thumb, became a window into a moment I wasn't meant to witness. Steam rolled out into the hallway, carrying the warm scent of cedar soap. I'm a steady hiss of water pounding against skin. I was just on my way to my room, passing by, when I stopped. My steps froze mid-stride, my breath caught. Through that gap, I saw him, Daniel. He wasn't the man I usually saw in casual clothes, the one who laughed easily at the dinner table and asked about my day with friendly interest. This was someone else entirely. He stood with his back to me, water coursing over broad shoulders, sculpted like they'd been carved from stone. The light streaming in through the small bathroom window made the droplets shimmer on his skin like liquid silver. Muscles flexed beneath the surface every time he shifted. I didn't mean to look so long, but curiosity has a way of rooting you to the floor, of making time feel slower. Then he turned slightly, just enough for me to see the sharp line of his jaw, the tension in his neck, the steady rise and fall of his chest. It wasn't just the sight that got to me. It was the way he carried himself. Strong, unbothered, entirely unaware he was being watched. I slipped away quietly, pulse hammering, trying to shake the image from my mind. But it clung stubbornly, replaying itself in vivid detail. The water, the light, the curve of his shoulders. Over the next few days, it became impossible not to notice him. The way his voice seemed deeper when he was tired. The way he carried heavy boxes in from the car, muscles straining beneath his shirt. Little things I had somehow ignored before now felt impossible to unsee. I caught myself watching him, studying him, noticing how he laughed, how he smelled faintly of wood smoke and citrus after shaving. Every interaction buzzed with an undercurrent I couldn't quite name. And that's when I stumbled on his secret. It was late one evening, the house quiet, when I found his laptop open on the counter. At first, I only meant to close the tabs, but one window stopped me cold, a private account, transactions, messages, a side of him no one else seemed to know existed. I shouldn't have looked. But I did, and suddenly, I held in my hands something dangerous. Something that felt like power. I stared at the screen, my pulse racing, the glow of the laptop bathing the kitchen in cold light. For a moment, I didn't even breathe. Messages, payments, private chats. Things Daniel clearly didn't want anyone to find out about. A part of me felt shocked. Another part of me felt something else. Like I had just found the single thread holding together a man who always seemed so composed, so untouchable. And now, here it was. His weakness. His secret. When I heard his footsteps down the hall, I closed the laptop and waited, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. He walked into the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, hair a little messy, clearly tired from work. But when his eyes met mine, I didn't look away. Not this time. "We need to talk," I said quietly, holding up my phone with a picture of what I'd seen still glowing on the screen. His expression changed instantly. Surprise, confusion, and then a flicker of something else. Worry. "Where did you get that?" His voice was low, cautious. "Doesn't matter," I said, taking a slow step closer. "What matters is I know." He ran a hand over his face, clearly unsettled. "Look, it's not what it... Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like." I cut him off, my tone calm but deliberate. "Relax. I'm not here to ruin your life, but you and I both know this is interesting." The air between us felt different now. Charged. "What do you want?" he asked finally, voice rough, eyes searching mine for an answer he couldn't predict. I let the silence stretch before leaning in just enough so my voice dropped to a near whisper. "I want you to be honest with me about what you want." His jaw tightened. I could see the war behind his eyes, his careful control slipping. I smiled faintly, like a predator circling but not yet attacking. "Don't worry," I added softly. "Your secret is safe with me, for now." Daniel stood there frozen, his knuckles white where his hands gripped the edge of the counter. He wasn't used to being cornered. This was a man who usually controlled every room he walked into. But now, the power balance had shifted, and we both felt it. "Look," he said finally, his voice tight. "Whatever you think this is, just drop it. It's not worth the trouble." I tilted my head slightly, watching him with a calmness I didn't quite feel. Inside, my heart was pounding like a drum, but outwardly, I stayed collected. "Maybe for you," I said softly, "but for me, it changes everything." His eyes narrowed like he was trying to read my mind. And what exactly do you want then? I let the question hang in the air before answering. I want the truth, Daniel. About what you hide. About what you really want when no one's looking. He exhaled slowly, the kind of breath a man takes when he knows he's already lost the high ground. You don't know what you're asking for, he muttered, his tone lower now, heavier. Then explain it to me, I said, my voice steady but soft, because I think I do. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the room. Finally, he said in a quieter voice, this could get messy. I gave the faintest hint of a smile. Maybe. But maybe messy is exactly what I want. Something changed in his eyes then, like a locked door creep in a fraction of an inch. It wasn't surrender, not yet. But it wasn't refusal either. Be careful, he said finally, his voice a warning but his gaze holding mine like a challenge. Careful, I repeated softly, stepping closer until I could see the pulse jump in his neck. I didn't come here to be careful. I came here to find out what you've been hiding. His jaw clenched again, but he didn't back away. And that was the moment I knew the game had truly begun. Daniel didn't move. He just stood there, shoulders stiff, eyes locked on mine like he was trying to decide if I was dangerous or if I was the danger he secretly wanted. His breath was steady, but there was something underneath it, like a storm waiting to break. Why are you pushing this? He asked finally, his tone deeper now. You don't know what you're walking into. I gave a small shrug, even though my chest felt tight. Maybe I like walking into things I'm not supposed to, I said quietly. His eyes searched mine, slow and deliberate, like he was looking for hesitation. He didn't find any. You have no idea what this could do, he said, almost like a warning, but his voice wasn't steady anymore. There was a crack in it, a small one, but I heard it. I said, holding his gaze. Because I think you're more afraid of yourself than of me. He flinched. Just barely, but I caught it. That was when I knew I was right. Daniel took a slow step toward me, closing the distance by only a fraction, but enough to feel the shift in the air. He wasn't in control anymore, not like he wanted to be. This doesn't end the way you think, he said softly, but there was something different in his tone now. Less warning, more surrender. I let the words hang for a moment before answering. Maybe I don't want it to end the way you think, I whispered back. That was when he stopped resisting. Not fully, not yet. But his eyes told me the line he'd been holding on to so tightly had already started to break. And for the first time, Daniel looked at me like a man who realized he wasn't the one in control anymore. Daniel's jaw tightened like he was holding back something heavy. For a long moment, the air between us felt sharp, like if either of us moved the whole thing would shatter. He looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing the ground was crumbling, but still refusing to step back. You think this is a game, he said finally, but there wasn't much conviction in his voice anymore. I shook my head slowly. No, I think you've been running from something. Maybe for a long time. And maybe I'm just the first person who refused to let you hide. He blinked, like the words had hit harder than I meant them to. His shoulders shifted slightly, the way a man does when his armor starts to crack. You don't get it, he said quietly. Some truths don't stay small once they come out. Maybe they're not supposed to. I answered softly. For the first time, he laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was short, rough, like it surprised even him. You're not going to let this go, are you? I met his eyes steadily. No. And that was it. Something broke in him then, not loudly, not with any big gesture, but I could feel it. The shift. He didn't step back this time. He didn't warn me again. He just looked at me like he was finally admitting to himself that the secret he'd been guarding so carefully was no longer his alone. The room felt smaller now, quieter, like everything outside of it had faded. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower than before. If I tell you, there's no going back. Maybe I don't want to go back, I said softly. And in that moment, I knew whatever he was about to reveal was going to change everything. Daniel's eyes stayed on me, dark and unblinking, like he was measuring how much of myself I was willing to risk. He didn't move at first, didn't even breathe for what felt like forever. And then finally, he spoke. There are things I've done, he said slowly, the words coming out like he was pulling them through fire. Things I swore I'd never talk about again. I didn't speak. I didn't even blink. I just waited. He shook his head slightly, running a hand over his face as if trying to rub the thoughts away. "You want the truth?" he asked, almost to himself. "Yes," I said softly. He looked at me then, really looked, like he was trying to decide if I was strong enough to carry the weight of what he was about to hand me. "I wasn't always this person you see now," he began, his voice low but steady. "I've burned bridges I can't rebuild. Walked away from people I shouldn't have. Chosen things that came with the price I'm still paying." I felt the words settle in the room, heavy and sharp. "What kind of price?" I asked carefully. Daniel's jaw worked like he was chewing on memories he didn't want to swallow. "The kind that leaves scars," he said finally. "The kind you can't always see." I stepped closer then, slow and deliberate, until there was barely a breath of space between us. "Maybe I wasn't looking for perfect," I whispered. "Maybe I just wanted real." He let out a low, almost bitter laugh, shaking his head again. "Real isn't as pretty as you think," I said quietly. "I'm not afraid of ugly." Something shifted in his expression then, something small but undeniable, like the last lock on a door finally gave way. And for the first time, I felt him let me in. Daniel didn't speak right away. He leaned back slightly, like the weight of everything he carried was pushing him down. When he finally opened his mouth, his voice was lower than before, almost like he didn't want the walls to hear. "It was years ago," he said slowly. "I was younger, reckless, thought I could handle anything life threw at me. And then there was her." I stayed still, not wanting to break the thread he was finally pulling. "She trusted me," he continued, eyes fixed on some point far away. "More than anyone ever should have. And I failed her. I wasn't there when she needed me most. I walked away because I thought I was doing the right thing. Because I thought I was protecting her." His jaw tightened as he said it, like the memory itself was cutting him open all over again. "But you weren't?" I asked softly. His laugh was short, bitter. "No. I left her to fight something she shouldn't have had to face alone. And when I finally realized what I'd done, it was too late. She was gone." The words hung there, heavy, like a door slamming shut. "Gone?" I asked carefully, though I already knew what he meant. He nodded once, slow, the muscles in his face tight. "She died. And I never got to tell her I was sorry. Never got to fix it. That's the truth you wanted so badly." For a long moment, neither of us said anything. I could see the storm behind his eyes, the years of silence, the guilt that had carved itself into his bones. "That's why you keep everyone at a distance," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. His eyes met mine, sharp but tired. "Because getting close means losing someone all over again," he said. "And I can't do that twice." I stepped closer, closing the space between us until I could feel the heat of his skin. "Or maybe," I said softly, "it means finally letting someone stay." He didn't answer, but he didn't move away either. I knew in that quiet, I knew the walls he'd built were starting to crack. Daniel stood there, shoulders heavy, like the story he had just told had taken everything out of him. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, like the room itself understood that something raw and unfinished had been laid bare. I didn't rush to fill the quiet. Sometimes silence does what words can't. It lets the truth settle where it belongs. "You carry her everywhere," I said softly after a long pause, "don't you?" He didn't look at me right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the floor, jaw tight. "Every single day," he admitted, his voice rougher now. "You don't just lose someone like that and walk away clean. It sticks. It shapes you. Turns you into someone you barely recognize." I took a slow step closer. "That's why you keep people at arm's length. It's not because you don't feel, it's because you feel too much." His eyes lifted then, meeting mine sharply. "You think you've got me all figured out?" he asked, a hint of challenge in his tone. "No," I said calmly. "But I think you've been bleeding for years and calling it strength." The words hit him. I saw it in the way his shoulders tensed, the way his gaze shifted like he was fighting something inside himself. "You have no idea what it's like," he said finally, almost under his breath, "to look back every day and wish you could rewrite one moment. Just one. But life doesn't hand you a pen twice." I nodded slowly. Maybe not, but maybe it gives you a new page. Daniel let out a small, humorless laugh. You really believe that? Yes, I said simply. Because people don't break just to stay broken. They break so something real can finally come through the cracks. For the first time, his eyes softened. Not much, but enough. It was like watching a man who had lived in shadows glance toward the light and wonder if it was safe there. You talk like someone who's been through it, he said. I hesitated for a moment. Maybe I have, I said finally. Maybe that's why I'm standing here instead of walking away. He studied me then. Really studied me, like he was seeing me for the first time. You should walk away, he said, but his voice lacked conviction now. Maybe, I said softly. But I think you want me to stay. This breath caught just slightly, the smallest crack in the armor he'd built so carefully. This doesn't end the way you think, he warned, but it was softer now, almost like a plea. Then let it end the way it's supposed to, I replied. The tension in the room was different now. It wasn't just about the secret he had carried for years. It was about what came next, whether he would finally stop running from himself long enough to let someone in. He didn't speak right away. He looked at me like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing the jump would change everything. Finally, he said, I don't know how to do this anymore. Good, I said quietly. Because maybe this time, you don't have to do it alone. And that was the moment something inside him shifted. Not all at once, not like some dramatic ending to a movie, but like a door that had been locked for years finally creaked open just enough to let the first bit of light in.